I bought this vintage bench over a year ago and had it sitting on my front porch for a long time as I waited to do something with it. Then we sold our house and it came to the warehouse and was piled in a corner. Finally, we decided it was time to get this thing done. We are staging a bed and breakfast for a client, and this bench will make the perfect porch furniture. The first step is to completely disassemble basically everything. I am telling you, there are a million staples in here. I've been filling staples for 2.5 days, but I can't wait to see what it looks like when it's finished because it's already looking pretty fabulous. As you can see, in some areas, there actually were 2 layers of fabric because they had not completely taken the fabric off when they reupholstered it last time. This all appears to have original batting and some cardboard for construction of it, and we're going to discard all of that as we are not putting fabric back on here. We're going to wooden plank this sofa.
How come the stars come to shine when it's dark from so far away? Show us where we are.
And as you can see, we've got some great springs that we're taking out of this sofa. So at the end of this video, you're going to see a couple projects that we do to upcycle those. Whenever we do any kind of reupholstery work and there's disassembly to be done, that's always on Sue. She is the one with gator grip hands and is able to plow through ripping everything apart. Me, I'm the one who pulls all the staples. This is less about working really hard and more about being patient. It takes a lot of time just to get through this. Don't be in a rush. This is a big project and it really helps to have the right tools as well. We do have an upholstery tack remover and that makes the job a lot easier. I've got Rob with me. Rob is Anna's husband, and Sue and I started taking staples out and cleaning it all last night, and then the construction fairy came in. That would be him.
All right, what we start with is getting the back straight. On the back, I put a level, I clamped it in place so I got a straight edge across the back. And then to get the boards coming out square, I clamped a square to the level. That way everything's straight, plumb, square. And then you start in the middle, work one way, come back to the middle, work the other way. And as you get a board, I pre-cut all these at 24 inches. That way they're long to the front and then we can scribe the front. As you start in the middle, the first thing you have to do is cut a notch to get around this. So you just scribe back how far it is from the level to here, which is 1 inch. And you cut out a 1 inch shape. And as you can see, it slides right in place. The rest go across, square with the level. You get to the upright, you do the same thing. You scribe out what you're gonna cut and then let it slide.
So when you're
back.
saying scribe out, you just mean basically if you're holding this here, you're measuring the distance between the wood and the back, right?
Correct.
So that I know that if that's an inch between wood and back, where this lines up, I make an inch mark.
Correct. On that one, it's perfectly square, so it's 1 inch. On this one, this board is at an angle, so you measure the distance from the level to the board, because you have a little bit of a gap right here. That distance is this distance, and then it comes back on an angle to fill in this gap to that board.
Right.
I can show you with the straight edge.
And if it's not perfect, it's gonna be okay because we're gonna have slats going down as well. So some of this will be hidden when we actually do the work.
So you'd measure from the level to the board. You get that, that'd be 2 inches. You come over here to where it's touching. That's 2 inches. You'd measure across, get that measurement, 1.5 inches. You take that measurement to here. That's your 1.5 inches. And then your distance between here and here is what your angle becomes. So that's 3/8 of an inch. So I move here, I mark 3/8 of an inch, and that is my angle from the 2-inch point to that. And that'll give me the angle of this board, and this edge is square here.
Thanks. That was very helpful.
Okay, another item to mention, when you're building with wood, you want to look at the crown of the wood, the way the grain is. This is called the cup. You always want to put the cup down. In other words, it's going to go down this way. Reason being is if you put it this way, that's called cup up. The grain is facing up. The board over time is going to naturally want to bow up on the edges. So to keep that from happening, you put it down, and then when it's fastened, it holds it in place and doesn't allow that natural curve to come back into the board.
People build outside patio decks.
Yes, and they get the crown wrong.
Oh, and then it looks all wonky. Yeah,
That's
so
why.
decks like that look. Yeah, like.
Yeah, the boards are literally cupping up. See, when the rain gets on it,
And it
starts to
expands the
shift.
grain, right?
Mm-hmm. Expands grain, and the grain wants to go back to its form of being a round tree. So when people do that on decks, that's like something just drives me bananas.
Construction fair. Most of these cuts are made with a simple jigsaw. Pop right in.
And do just the opposite for the next one. And then we cut it and pop it in. This time we have a staple in our way we need to remove. That staple happens to be a framing staple. You can tell because the gauge of it is thicker. It's better to bend it over and leave it in. The thinner staples, the fabric staples can be removed. These thicker staples are staples that are holding this upright in place, so we don't want to take them out. But we can bend them down to get them out of our way. We'll cover them up with the wood that we are putting in. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to notch this out to go past that rail. But I need to know where it's going to end up. So right now off the front, we're leaving an extra inch that will cut off the front later. But to keep all our boards going the same, I'm going to use that point to the back of that rail for how deep the cut needs to be. So this measurement here will be the measurement on this board. This will be the part we cut out. That's where the rail's at. Now we got the fit around here. Now we got to put a little bit on the back because this upright comes down and touches it. And this mark is going to indicate where we cut the bottom of that off to fit this contour of the frame. Now we match the contour coming around.
So what are we gonna do about this gappage here and the way that it doesn't really sit flat? So I'm gonna fast forward through this section because, well, Rob and I developed a pretty solid plan here on how to do it. Then slightly thereafter, my son came and actually gave us an even better idea.
Okay, so
Back to Rob.
now you brought this board in here and you want to cut this out. So the first mark you're going to do is this. That's going to give you your point that's going to end up here.
Okay.
Little flat measuring stick. So this point, this pencil line indicates this point. This point is going to be up here. The way to find that point is to measure back to here. So then you take that number and you transpose that number to here. That mark is that point when it's cut out. To find your widths, you're going to make lines on each side of it. That width is this point, and it's all 90 degrees to that. So you transpose everything you got here to be this same point.
So how do you do that?
The easiest way to do it is with a speed square. You take that point and you want 45 degrees from there. So speed square, which is, some people call them triangles, but it's really a speed square. You take that and you use that point. Now this point and this is this and this. So now you have this side of this up here now. Now this is going to be this, 90 degrees. So it's your speed square once again. To get the other side of this, it's whatever that distance is. So you check
It's
that
a lot
distance.
like geometry, isn't it?
Lot of little geometry going on here.
Yeah, I wasn't really good at geometry.
You take it, you transpose it to that point. Speed square again. You put it on your mark.
Fun fact, in high school I wanted to be an algebra teacher until I found out you had to know geometry to be an algebra teacher.
Well, yes. You cut that X out and you get this.
Nice. Yeah.
And it'll fit right in place for you, just like so.
We'll come to Rob's side of the world.
So we'll get these fit in here and then I can show you. This flat part was coming across and then the radius was turning here, so my scribe was on the bottom of the board. It'll allows them to fit right in
Perfect.
and plane with the back, just like
Nice.
that.
Bob's got something to show us.
Okay, so if we can look at this board, inner board is going in and back out. It's got 2 different radiuses on it. So now that we have all of them in place, and we know they're square to the back because we did that to begin with.
Right.
We want this radius on the front, so we want to scribe this. But we don't necessarily want it to be the same as this. So give yourself an overhang, pick your measurement. 3/4 of an inch is usually pretty good. You're going to take your pencil, and you know what, I'm going to get a smaller one. There you go. So piece 3/4 inch 1x4. I'm going to take this, and this is how I'm going to scribe it. I'm going to run both at the same time.
Now, if I had finished getting all those staples out last night, then that probably would have been easier for him. It would have slid a little better. But I didn't because I didn't know he was going to start this morning. Hey guys, what are you doing?
Making things.
Making a thing, but we've changed our plans a little. Can we talk about it?
Sure.
This is my son, by the way, John.
Yes.
Yeah, we're adding the support struts underneath the actual seating area. It's going to serve 2 purposes. One, it's going to give us strength. Johnny, we're upside down. Flip it. It's going to give us strength and also a place for us to actually fasten through the bottom into the board. That way there's no top fasteners going through the top of the board. There'll be no exposed fasteners on the seat.
So it'll be just like they're just sitting there.
Because we're going to actually fasten it from underneath through this 2x4 and this 1x4 into the bottom of this piece.
Okay, so let's talk about the placement of these boards for anybody who wants to do this at home. Because I'll tell you, Sue and I looked for a couple hours last night for YouTube videos to find out like how to make this, because we didn't know you were going to help us. We were thinking we were going to, you know, just figure this all out by ourselves and, you know, make and learn. And there was virtually no instructions.
Johnny?
The most important part is this front edge right here, because that's where the majority of your weight is going to be put in the dead center here. But when you stand up, you always put your hands on the edge of the chair, right? So when you go to push up, you want to have your strongest parts up at the front here. And we found that a 2x4 just happens to be the perfect height when pressed up against this edge, this front edge here, that it connects down here at the bottom.
This plane right here.
And even though it's not a perfect fit right there, there's enough, there's enough, you know, screws or nails we can put in there it'll grab enough of it and create the support we need at the front here. And this back one is mostly just to create a secondary support, I guess. It's not so much for strength as it is just for longevity of the piece.
And so you're going to shim.
Yeah, we'll put a little tiny block underneath here, and this piece will stay, this piece will be rotated just a little bit, and this piece right here is mostly just for longevity of your piece. Like, you don't really need this one, but after a year in Florida humidity, your boards will start to sink down. But in theory, this piece right here should prevent that from happening.
So it'll hopefully, so Rob had talked earlier about the cupping of the wood, right? And so this is then going to give additional strength for the humidity. This is going to be in a covered porch where it's going, but with humidity in Florida, it's going to take on a lot of moisture, and this will help keep it from getting soft, right?
Correct.
And this board giving.
Well, not necessarily soft, but it'll prevent it from warping. It'll keep it from, because it's still, it's wood, so
Yeah.
wood is going to take on moisture. So it will still soak up that humidity, but it's less
likely to bow.
Exactly. You'll have less warpage, less bowing, and all around it should allow the piece to withstand the weather for a lot much more time.
Awesome. All right, I'll let you guys get back to building now.
In theory.
In theory.
We done did do shims.
We done did do shims.
Done did the shims.
Those be the shims. Oh, and you shimmed this too, right here. I didn't shim here. Now, what's this shim for?
Just to rock that 2x4 up to match the angle of the seat. It wasn't necessary, but we were already doing everything else and figured we might as well do it with these two.
Okay.
I can see the way you're sitting quietly. You look a little lonely with your heart out of your chest. I'm screaming, help me forget all about today. My brain is filled with mercury, but it doesn't even matter. We're nothing but illusions. I can be so cynical, but something about you.
Another quick tip while we're building this out is that we're actually sanding the side surfaces as well as the front and back surfaces. And this is because when the boards are together, we don't want, and for us, this is going like at a lake house, and women might be in short shorts or bathing suits. We don't want their legs to get caught in between the wood slats as they sit there and enjoy their day and then get up and have that pinch where they've kind of gotten caught in the wood. So we're sanding all these joining edges as well, so they'll be rounded off and less likely to have a point where their backsides will get pinched.
You makes me feel at home. Help me forget about today. I was hoping I could sit with you. She's lighting up the way I've had in front of me.
Okay, so we have an obvious crack here. When we put the wood planks, it'll probably short up, but to make sure that it looks good and the way we want it, we're gonna go ahead and add some tight bond glue and clamp it up overnight. And before we move on to my crafting project, I want to be sure that you know about CreativeCon.live. This is going to be a live event we're holding here in Jacksonville for people who either have or want to have their own creative business, whether you're selling on Etsy, in booths, in a store, however it is. We have got some amazing speakers coming live. Tickets are only $2.95, and we still have some available. So go to CreativeCon.live to see more. This is only a few of the speakers we're going to have there. I reached out to Facebook to figure out what I could do with some of these springs. Of course, I have a million things pinned on Pinterest, but this is the item that caught my eye, so let's try it. When we laid it out, we felt that the springs were actually too tall for this design, so that means a gator grip has to come to the rescue. Yep, she went out and bought a pair of bolt cutters from Home Depot, and we are going to cut these babies in half. And then we kind of had to decide exactly how we wanted to lay it out, whether we wanted the wide side up or the wide side down. In the end, we decided to go for every other. And in case you're wondering about that gold frame, I have had that gold frame in my thrift pile for at least 2 years. So it's great to have another item that we actually get to move out of here. We have several sets of staple guns that are really good quality staple guns that work with the air compressor. And this is the first one we chose. I have to say, this hands down was the hardest part of this project, just getting these staples to hold the springs actually to the wood. I'm not sure if our staples weren't long enough or if the springs are just super tricky, if the oak of the frame is too hard and it's creating a hole that the staples are sliding out of. But in any case, this was definitely the tricky part of this job. Before I get to talking about what I'm doing here, I want to say that I thought I had footage of it, but I guess I didn't. I actually used Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in black and antiqued this frame. It was super easy, really just putting some wax on and wiping a little off. And I love the sort of dark bronziness that it gave to it. It definitely is more my style and keeps with the rusty wood. So now we just took a piece of old drop cloth that we had in the warehouse. We were talking about using burlap, and that would have been nice. But in the end, we had this drop cloth sitting around, and so we went ahead and used it. I'm making it a little larger than the frame so that I can roll it up on itself on the back and have a nice edge. In the end, you'll see that didn't happen. Adding the staples on the back and the muslin over it, and even making little channels around the springs with our staples did not hold all of the springs in place. So, last resort, I broke out my Dremel and put some very small holes in where I'm going to add some rusty wire that I happen to have in my stash. Working around these springs and the frame and the muslin was not easy. If I had just sort of gone with my gut, I should have used the wire in the beginning before I put the muslin on the back to hold the springs in place. I just didn't want to do that. But once I finally got the wire through the holes and pulled back up, wrapped around the springs, then I used my needle and pliers just to go ahead and twist the wire up and pull it tight. That way those springs aren't going anywhere. So then the first fun part of this project is actually making a little mossy nest and using some hot glue to secure it in place. Really, it's kind of held with the tension of the springs. The glue is just for a little bit of extra security. And once I get it all assembled, I actually go in at the end and off camera and put in a whole lot more glue. Then I'm going to build up some greenery that I have. These are just offcuts from other projects that I happen to have in a box, and I'm going to layer the greenery on top. And then I'm going to add a cute little nest that was prefabricated. We have a bunch of these that we're going to be selling at market next week, and so I just took a couple out of my market stash to add one to this frame and some of the other projects that we'll be working on. At the top of the springs, you might have noticed that I took one of the original strings that had been tied on to the springs from the sofa and looped it across. And what I've decided to do is actually stamp out Happy Spring on these little tiny triangles that were part of the leftover drop cloth material that we had. I just used a stamp set and stamped them right on, and I'm using my hot glue to add them. By the way, the Happy Spring was not an intended pun. It just happened to work out that way. That was really all there was to that project. I'll show you the results at the end. Now I'm taking another spring. This one we didn't cut in half. It's a full-size one, and some more Spanish moss. And basically, I'm going to do the same thing here that I did in the wreath. I'm going to glue this down. I'm going to use the strings to help me kind of keep it in place, glue it down, and then add a nest on top. I didn't add the greenery in this one because I'm going to add a cute little bow, and that's going to be my accent. For this one, I just want a nice bouquet of flowers. So I am taking some more of that drop cloth material. I'm wrapping it around the bottom base of my flowers that I've sort of bundled together, and I am going to tie it up. My last project is the easiest one because here I took one of the springs that we'd cut in half, and it left a sharp edge that I could just sort of wrap inside the nest and then hot glue it in place. Here is the completed projects that I made today using the springs from the sofa. I would love to hear what you think about them. What did you like? What was your favorite piece? Just give me some feedback. This was sort of a fun project outside of that sofa. Thank you so much for watching today. If you're new here or you haven't done it yet, please be sure to hit the subscribe button. It really helps. And we'll see you soon at vintagebedesign.com.